All right, welcome back on Africa Business Radio. I am Rachel, and of course, I've still got Winston with me in the studio.
Absolutely.
And we're getting right into our guest segment this morning. And as you all know, one of the important parts of the AfCFTA relates to financial services of banks and payment systems.
Absolutely.
Now, not quite long, the president of the Africa Export-Import Bank, that's Dr. Benedicta Orama, says that some 400 banks across the continent are already on board the new trade deal. And guess what? They're expected to increase that to 500 with a total of $8 billion in trade financing capabilities.
That's a good
Now,
look.
the big question, really big one. Now, the big question is, are Nigerian banks even prepared for all of this? On our guest segment today, we'll be having...
we'll be having
someone very important join us. Yes, please.
Yes, we'll be having Babajide Sodipo.
That's right.
So Babajide Sodipo is the senior manager, AfCFTA Relations at Afreximbank, responsible for coordinating and managing key bank initiatives and relationships centered around the AfCFTA and the African Union. So he is indeed somebody you want to listen to. He also did serve as Senior Manager, Export Development Advisory, leading the bank's interventions in providing advisory services and support to member states in the formulation, design, and implementation of policies, strategies, and regulatory frameworks to develop and promote trade competitiveness in regional, continental, and global markets. Now, if you know anything about the banking industry, you know that interventions is no small deal.
At all.
It's no small deal. So.
All right, we have him on standby already. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. All right,
so to you too.
Thank you for joining us. All right. Yes. All right. Now let's get right into the conversation. Of course, it's all centered on the financial services sector. But just before we get into that this morning, brief us on the status of the AfCFTA.
Right. So, of course, the AfCFTA is one of these things that have, because it's become a bit quite cliched. We hear about it quite a lot. And sometimes, even though we are very familiar with it and the term, we are not quite sure, or it's not everyone that fully understands what it means and what it's supposed to do. Right. So just a brief introduction for your listeners. The AfCFTA is the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It is essentially an international legal agreement signed onto by African countries to create, you might say, a single African market, right? So basically it creates a single African market for trade and economic activity related to goods, services among the African countries that have signed on to it and ratified it. And I think sometimes the best description that I've found in explaining it is sort of also is in terms of putting it in the context of, say, you have a country, Nigeria, right? You understand that when you want to do business in Nigeria, when you want to buy and sell, when you want to trade, whether it's products or services within Nigeria, you know that you are bound by the laws of Nigeria, right? So, for example, you know that, for a food product, you need to get NAFDAC certification. You need to pay your taxes, at this particular place. You know that for your industry, you know who your regulator is. So the CFTA tries to do that in the broader African context, right? It tries to lay down the rules, and the regulations which will guide trading and business between African countries.
Right.
So I think maybe that's the best way to illustrate what it is supposed to do.
Right.
So, like every other activity of such a nature, which is about rule making, institutional development, it does take some time. So what we've achieved so far really the initial legal set of agreements or legal set of commitments which cover trade in goods, trade in services in the first phase, and which of course covers all the different elements related to doing business in those areas. And in future phases, we'll be having rules related to investment, intellectual property, competition policy, and so on and so forth. And of course, you do realize given the interconnectedness of business activity. If you say trading goods, then you have to talk about things like standards, right?
Yeah.
And you have to talk about things like customs. So you have the CFTA providing rules related to customs activity, customs cooperation, and then of course when you're talking about trading services, then you'll be talking about regulations for industries, rules, and things like that. So essentially, like I said, it's a bunch of legal agreements which creates rights, obligations, and rules that will govern trade among and between African countries. And I think the key rationale for that is, if you remember our secondary school economics, right, demand and supply, where so when you're talking about demand, you're talking about the side that has to do with productive activity, employment, or rather, when you're talking about supply, right, creating the jobs and so on and so forth. But if you're going to invest in a manufacturing plant, you need to be sure that, okay, there's going to be a market where I'm going to sell the products from my manufacturing plants to, right? So what the CFTA tries to do is create a larger market for African producers, right? So that they can scale up, employ more people, get more income, and so on. So be it producers of services, yourself, or producers of goods. The whole idea is to create this incredible market of more than 1 trillion people, with a purchasing power that it's way more than any singular African country can mobilize for itself, and to give our own businesses the opportunity to enjoy the benefits of this market. So, in a broad sense, that is what the CFTA tries to do.
Interesting. Now it's more like a legal trading agreement within African countries. Now, based on this, how will we manage relations or extent with which we trade import materials with countries such as, take for instance, China? I understand that it will not be an overnight journey, but how do you see us managing relations like that?
Right, and I think one of the key questions that comes when you discuss this, and I think it's important to reemphasize. So the CFTA is for African countries, right? It is about creating advantages and opportunities for African businesses, African producers, African manufacturers, African service providers. So to that extent, it is not really about giving preferences or opportunities to non-African producers per se. Of course, within the global, within the country, of course, within the context of modern economies, we talk about global value chains, how we all integrate into global production lines and so on and so forth. But for the CFTA specifically, we have to look at it within the narrow objective of it being an attempt to create African markets for Africans, right? So because some have been wondering that, okay, if Nigeria or if a country signs onto the CFTA, does it mean that Chinese products will come into our market, things like that? No, the CFTA does not do that. It's about creating preferences, creating advantages, creating opportunities for Africans, right, within Africa. Of course, it means if you come and invest in Africa, right, you then can take advantage of those opportunities, right? But it's still primarily about creating a market for African countries and African producers.
Right. Sir, how far are we prepared to lower the cost of items in terms of dynamic currency conversion, real aggregate demand for ATO, and the tagging and monitoring of goods and services for rules of origin? And also, I would like to know what the current plan is for the Pan-African payment settlement system to be integrated into all ratified countries' custom system.
Right. I guess there are several components to the questions.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, like you said, so first of all, on the pass. So the Pan-African payment system is an initiative product that has been spearheaded or led by Afreximbank, endorsed by the African Union,
right?
To create a system whereby it becomes easier and cheaper, right, for African countries and African economic operators to trade among themselves, right, by simply making it easy, for currency conversions, making it easier again, let me use a practical example, whereby if you want to buy something in Kenya, rather than looking for dollars to buy shillings and then bringing it back to Nigeria, it's trying to create a system where you can essentially use your naira to pay, right? Get the products that you're looking for, and all that settlement, all those conversions, is done, let's say, behind the screen, using the PAT system in a manner that is cheaper, quicker, more efficient, for both our regulators, as well as the business operators. In terms of the CFTA and its impact on the cost of production, of course, for goods at least, you remember that one of the things that the CFTA does is that it tries to reduce or eliminate the tariff or the duties that you have to pay on products, produced or manufactured in Africa. Right. So, if, for example, you're a manufacturer in Lagos and you need a certain kind of raw material from Cameroon, right, to produce your product, where, for example, prior to the CFTA, you would have had to pay maybe 30% duties or tariff duties on that material you're importing from Cameroon. What the CFTA tries to do is, eliminate it, right? So that it means automatically the cost of your imports becomes much, and it helps you to become much more, cost competitive. And then, of course, economies of scale to the extent that you can produce for a larger market. Then, at least in certain industries, it makes your unit cost of production, much cheaper, which again helps you to be more competitive in the market. But bottom line is that the CFTA tries to facilitate trade, right, by reducing or by eliminating either the hindrances, the restrictions, or some of the elements that make trade more costly between African countries.
Right, that makes sense. All right, I think we'll just go on a short break, and when we return, we'll continue with our interview with Mr. Babajide Sodipo, the Senior Manager, AfCFTA Relations at Afreximbank. I'll be right back in just a moment.
You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available on podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
All All right, welcome back on Africa Business Radio. Just before that short break, we were getting on to our interview with Mr. Babajide Sodipo, the Senior Manager, AfCFTA Relations at Afreximbank. Of course, he was talking to us about the opportunities that this has afforded the financial sector, particularly Afreximbank, and what move they are making now, especially with the particular aim of liberalizing the sector that is in that particular agreement. Hello, sir. Can you hear us?
Right. Thank you. So I was saying that, when you want to talk about the impact or the importance of the CFTA, right, for banks, including Afreximbank, it's not just about the liberalization of the financial services sector, right? If you recall, the role of banks or financial institutions in our economy really is to support and finance and facilitate economic activity, right?
Yeah.
So the more economic activity you can generate, the more opportunities it creates for banks and for financial institutions.
Right.
So let's look at it first of all as the CFTA providing a catalyst for the generation of economic activity in Africa on a scale that has never been seen before, right? And first of all, the kind of opportunities that increase in economic activity will then create for banks, for financial institutions and so on and so forth, right? So let me give an example. So you have a shoe manufacturer, let's say in Aba, right? That the CFTA has given him an opportunity to export more shoes to Central Africa, North Africa, East Africa. He goes to his banker. He gets a loan to increase his manufacturing facilities. That's more business for the bank. Or someone wants to bring in certain products from Cameroon, from Egypt, from Ethiopia. He goes to his bank to finance that deal. That creates more opportunities for the bank, and of course for an institution like Afreximbank, which was created by African countries to be the trade finance bank for Africa. You can see how this is directly relevant and extremely important for our reason for being, if I might put it that way. So first of all, right, before we talk about the liberalization of the financial services sector, we must understand what increase in positive commercial activity and economic activity. We must understand how that impacts and supports our financial institutions, including large continental institutions like Afreximbank, and commercial banks in Nigeria, micro banks in Nigeria, whose clients and customers will then be able to do more business. So that's it on the one side. And then on the second side, of course, like I said, the CFTA covers both trading goods and trading services. And one of the priority services sectors that the CFTA has, that the heads of states have agreed to sort of liberalize and deepen within the context of the CFTA is the financial services sector. Right. All right. Now, the technical nature of the negotiation. So I was just pointing out that the liberalization of services and the financial sectors within the context of the CFTA is being done in a particular opportunities that will be created exercise.
Right. So based on all of this that you've just, mentioned, how prepared do you think the Nigerian financial services practitioners are for this new deal? Of course, we're already 1 month plus into the commencement of the deal, but how prepared do you think we are talking about the Nigeria's financial services sector now?
Well, I'll say, you are never, ever completely ready, right? It's about your state of readiness is always to be on a progressive scale.
True.
Right? Meaning, your readiness will improve from time to time, month to month, week to week. and so on and so forth. And I think that to a very large extent, right, even prior to the CFTA, you have had quite a few Nigerian financial institutions that have been very active in the African markets, in far-flung places like Zambia, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, even, of course, our West African cousins. You will see quite a number of Nigerian financial institutions are quite active there. So they've always had, what I'll call a continental and global perspective, right? So to that extent, the CFTA only serves to complement what I think for a lot of them is an existing vision, an existing ambition, and not just to be purely Nigerian banks or Nigerian players, but to be continental, eventually hopefully global players. So I do believe that these are things that they're all integrating and taking very paying very good attention to.
All right, so I know the three centerpieces of the AfCFTA has to do with SMEs, the women in trade, and young entrepreneurs. And these individuals need your support. Of course, by that I mean the banking system support. How has Afreximbank been a part of that support system, and what plans do you have in the long run?
So I think that the bank does a number of things, working with intermediaries to support a broad range of our economic players, right? Not just SMEs, not just women in business, not just youth. So we broadly support economic players, as I say, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. So to the extent that you have well-crafted, well-developed interventions, you're able to support the broad range of economic actors and players, right? But beyond that, of course, the bank does have specific products, specific services that, working with our partners nationally, we're able to target those supports to maybe some of the smaller companies, like SMEs, like some of our women-owned or led businesses, and we're able to grant a lot of support to that. But within the context of our specific discussion there on the CFTA, I must talk about the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which is a biennial event that is sponsored and supported by Afreximbank. The first one took place in Egypt in 2018, and then the next one is planned for Kigali in September this year. And what this trade fair does is that it provides an opportunity and a platform for producers, for buyers and sellers, right, to showcase their products, their goods to the whole of Africa, right? And from our experience, even in the last trade fair, what we discovered is that a lot of the key main participants in these trade fairs were really SMEs, women-led businesses, youth-led businesses, who for them, right, because they won't have the budgets of multinational company, they won't have the resources of an international company. Events such as the trade fair gives them that initial exposure to international trade and international opportunities, which they might not have been able to do within their own narrow budget. So to that extent, I'll definitely encourage all your listeners to look out and watch out, and hope to participate in the Intra-Africa Trade Fair that will be taking place in Kigali in September. Hopefully, by then, of course, the situations will have improved, allowing more travel and more engagements, which is really critical for economic growth.
Right. So, sir, in your opinion, as a professional and also as an expert, what would the government need to do to support banks, SMEs, women in trade, young entrepreneurs, especially with commencement of the trade agreement? Because these guys seem to be the most vulnerable and those who really need, interventions. So what would the government need to do?
Right. So from what you are also quite aware of, I'm sure, right? People in business, at the end of the day, what they really want is for the government to put in place an enabling environment,
right,
that will enable them to thrive, that will enable them to be competitive, that will enable them to be efficient. Because of course, as a business person, there are certain things you can control, right? You can control your investment, you can control maybe your labor, who you hire, you can control, your business decisions. But all of those things that you can control are situated within the wider context, right, of the economic environment, the business environment,
right,
of your country, which is made up of the regulations, policies, laws, and so many other things that as an individual businessman you may not have direct control over. And I think at the end, what you just want is a government that is responsive to your needs, that is conscious of your need as a business, whether small or big, and that puts in place the appropriate policies, the appropriate regulations, and the appropriate strategies that can help you to achieve your aim and aspiration as an entrepreneur and as a business person, right? And I think what is critical about that is communication, right? Communication between the businesses and the government, right? So that there's a two-way communication where government is fully apprised of, okay, this is what my businesses need to do well, and survive and be competitive, right? And at the same time, businesses are also able to understand that, okay, this is what the government is thinking, these are the policies, these are the regulations, and you're able to have a conversation about how it impacts you. And then in the course of that conversation, you shape those policies, those laws, those regulations in a way that benefit you, while at the same time you provide the appropriate inputs to the governments to be able to be able to do the right thing. So the critical thing really is just give the businesses the appropriate environment. To be sure that they'll thrive.
Especially now. All right, now, Mr. Sodipo, just because I have you here right now, and I think I need to seize this opportunity to find out if there is any information on the mechanisms of starting to use the African passport visa requirement application processes.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Do you have any information on the mechanisms of starting to use the African passport visa requirement application processes?
The African passport visa requirement application, not quite. I don't think I have a lot of detail on that.
All right, let's move on to what went down yesterday, talking about the Borderless Trade Network. They held their first virtual edition of the Borderless Trade Saloon series, and their focus was on women in business. And of course, you were a part of that particular series. What was key for you during the meeting?
Right. So I think, several things. One, I found it very inspiring. I think, at the end of the day, one is always encouraged and impressed by the courage, the boldness, the strength of our women, particularly those that decide to do business, right? Because it's a tough environment out there, right? And to be an entrepreneur, you need a certain kind of courage. It's not everyone that has that. And I think I was quite inspired by by the willingness, by the enthusiasm, by the interest, by the passion of the members of that network for the activity that they were involved with, as well as their willingness to support each other, help each other, including through sessions such as this, whereby what we're really doing is really educating each other about opportunities that the CFTA is creating for them. So I was really struck by that really positive that passion, that enthusiasm, and that dedication to their arts or dedication to their businesses. And I think it speaks very well of the future for all the people in that network.
Right. So, sir, on the final note, how can the media really come in? Because the media definitely can play a huge role, but what is expected of the media across the continent to help and the smooth flow of the AfCFTA? What modalities do you think should be adopted?
Right. I think media, particularly, business media such as yourself.
Yes.
And I think you guys play an irreplaceable role in facilitating these conversations, in getting information across in a manner that is not too technical, in a manner that is not too, legalistic, in a manner and in a language that business will understand. And I think that's a key role that you guys play. You speak to business in the language that they understand, and you have to help play that role in explaining, sensitizing, and engaging them on initiatives such as the AfCFTA. And I think that educational aspect of your mandate and of your role is really critical. And it's certainly not something that anyone else other than media can actually do.
All right, it's been a very informative time with you, Mr. Babajide Sodipo. Thank you so much for the insights on AfCFTA and, of course, the role of the financial sector. We do hope that you'll be available for further conversations if need be.
We'd love that.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for all the work you're doing. I think it's an outstanding job. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was Babajide Sodipo, the Senior Manager, AU AfCFTA Relations at Afreximbank. Of course, he's responsible for coordinating and managing key bank initiatives and relationships centered around the AfCFTA and the African Union. And yes, that was really, really informative, Winston. I got to ask some very important questions that I've been having in mind lately about the AfCFTA and, of course, the role of the financial sector.